Hi there, this is Eugene from Reflective Learning, and in this video we're going to be looking at how to go about conducting the reflective learning diagnostic assessments for either an individual or for a group of learners. So by now you should have login details that you've received from us, and learners should know that they're about to write a maths assessment which tests their capabilities in mathematics. So the first step is a pretty obvious one, but often can be overlooked, and that is actually just preparing the stations where a learner is going to write the assessment. So the assessment can be run over a desktop, a laptop, tablet or mobile phone, and if you're able to, it's best to get this all set up beforehand so that the whole process can be a quick and smooth one. So learners should have either pencils or pens and paper to do rough calculations on. And obviously the computers or the device should be set up such that they can come in and quickly log in. After getting learners settled at their assessment stations, the next step is to give them a pre-assessment briefing. So these instructions can be found at the back of the user guide that we would have sent you, and just cover some introductory points to the assessment. The first point is the fact of what they are doing within this diagnostic and what its aim and what its hope is. The next is the fact that it needs to happen under strict exam conditions. So if a learner talks or helps somebody else or copies or uses calculator, basically the assessment results are less valid and it doesn't have as much value at the end of the day. This is ultimately for them and to help them, and so getting them to understand that will often cut out a lot of this behavior. Also, we don't want learners to actually fear making mistakes. The whole point is that mistakes help us and guide us to where we need to learn, and so there shouldn't be any fear or shame in making a mistake. In fact, the diagnostic is more about actually figuring out what they can't do, and we're actually more interested in what they can't do than what they can do. So this is something that they need to understand up front. If they don't know how to answer a question, then there is an I don't know button that they can choose. We'll speak a little bit more about this later, but the whole idea is that they don't guess, that they actually say I don't know. There's also no time limit for the assessment, and so as a result they just need to work at their natural pace, their natural speed. They don't need to rush, and if other learners towards the end of the assessment end up leaving or end up finishing quicker, that's perfectly fine. They just need to keep working at their own pace. The next is the fact that they will have rough paper to work on, and in fact there are some questions that will guide them as to where this needs to happen. And then the final bit of the instructions, just getting them to understand the context of the test, the fact that there are 7 different sections, that the first couple are longer than the others, and just giving them a bit of a guideline exactly how you are going to get over the next little while yourself. So the first place that they'll need to go to is if you go to your internet browser and you type in lms.reflectivelearning.co.za. It'll bring you up to a page that looks like this, and then learners can click on Get Started Now. So this process of the logging process is actually perhaps the trickiest part of the whole diagnostic, in that the username and the password have to be exact, because every user has their own individual account. So how we normally set it up, with a learner's first name, their surname, at their school.co.za, and then their password will be their first name. The problem is that if learners put in a capital somewhere along the line, or if they put in a dot or a space or something like that, and it's not exactly what their login is, they're going to have problems. So if you're able to, it might be a good idea to actually print out the logins, almost cut them into strips and hand them to the learners, just so they've got something exact to work from. So once a learner clicks login, it will take them to their own individual site. Right. The first part that you'll see over here is where they'll click to get the assessment started. But if you do want to give them the opportunity to have a look at this demo, which takes them on how to actually use the answering keyboard, which I'll show you in a moment, you can give them a chance to there. Otherwise, there's also a picture down below. So once all the learners are logged in, and it's best to try and keep them going at a steady pace with each other up to this point. But once everyone is logged in and ready, you'll see that the assessment that they can click on. If they're writing the foundation phase or the primary school test, it'll look slightly different, but otherwise they can click on the high school assessment. The first part that they will get is actually a questionnaire. So before they get to maths details, we all, besides measuring their conceptual understanding in mathematics, we also look at what we call cognitive performance indicators. So these are things like their mindset, their motivation, their metacognition, pace, precision, and perseverance. And it starts off by getting learners to answer a questionnaire style assessment. So they do have to answer every question as they go along, right? And the idea is that we don't lose any data along the way, right? So there's a bit of a questionnaire that they do. The next bit is that they will look at different sections of the assessment. So we've divided the mathematics assessment into 7 components, or what we call threads, right? The first one here being numbers. And so a learner would have a look at what that means, what the thread actually means, and then they predict what percentage or what level that they think that they will get for that particular thread. They then pick, how does that make me feel? Right, so I've said, well, I get 70% and that makes me feel happy. Fantastic. Right, they do that for each thread as they go along. So maybe I don't feel like I'm going to do so well on fractions, and that doesn't make me so happy. Or maybe I get average marks in patterns and algebra and I feel okay about it, or more indifferent. So a learner will pick what they think they will get for each one. And once they've done that, they click continue to the assessment. If not all the questions are filled out, you might have something that pops up that says that you need to go back and answer. That just helps us make sure that we get all the data in that's needed for the analytics later on. So when a learner is ready, they can click on continue to assessment, and it will take them to the first batch of questions. You'll see up at the top we've got the 7 threads that we've divided into, and part of the process that we like to go is actually to get learners to understand the whole context in which they're learning mathematics. So we will tell them up front what the different threads are. Obviously we won't tell them answers to questions along the way, but as a learner will go through, questions will be of varied difficulty through the assessment, and you'll see that it's 1 page per thread. The first couple of threads are by far the longest because they're the most concepts that are tested, and so learners should know this up front actually when they go in, that the first couple are going to be longer than the others. So let's look at the first question. It says, when counting, which number is the next number after 723? So in order to answer, a learner will need to click on this bar over here, and the answering keyboard will pop up. Now that's important. This keyboard that you see over here is not a calculator. It is the answering keyboard, and a learner won't be able to actually type in using a keyboard, for instance, on a computer. The reason is because there are some elements on this keyboard which are specific to maths that we help in order to answer the questions. So in this case, the answer 724. But let's say, for instance, down the line when things get a little bit more tricky, if a learner needs to put in an exponent, for instance, I can click exponent, and there to the power of 3 pops up. If a learner wants to go back, they can click delete, and so on. If you need to put in remainders, there's that. And so this is just a custom keyboard that will actually just help make the whole answering process a whole lot easier. You'll find that if you're working with a cell phone, it will actually suppress the natural keyboard that comes with a cell phone, and then this one will pop up instead. If a learner wants to get rid of it, they just click the X over there, and means that they can move on. So as learners go down through the assessment, But you'll see that some of the questions are open-ended. You'll see that some are multiple choice questions, but what you always have is an I don't know. Right? So that helps us in terms of one of the measures that we look at, and that is perseverance. So if a learner doesn't know when counting in threes, what's the next number after that, right? They also have the ability to click I don't know. Now, when we introduce the whole assessment, one of the things that we try to tell learners is that we tell them not to guess, right? Because if they just accidentally get one right, then it skews the data that we are looking at later. But at the same time, we also don't want learners just to say, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. So it's about getting that balance right of how we actually put it across to learners that we want them to try and answer every question possible. But if they genuinely don't know what the answer is, they can click I don't know. And you'll see that there's always an option there for multiple choice also. So as learners go through the assessment, you'll see that there's something like that which pops up. That just shows that this question, we recommend that they try to use pens and paper to do their rough calculations. So we're giving some element of guidance on which questions to do that on, which ones they shouldn't need to. But ultimately, it is still up to the learner. So learners will go through this first set of questions, and at the end you will see a button that says validate numbers. Now, as we said, that a learner needs to answer every question along the way, so if they want to check whether they've perhaps just missed out one, or if you're guiding them through the process more carefully and you want to check whether they've answered all the questions, you click on validate numbers and it will take you to the first question that perhaps you've missed out along the way, and it highlights all of them red where you have missed out. At the bottom, you'll see that I've only answered 3, there are 41 unanswered, and this just helps to make sure we have all the data. When a learner is ready, they can click onto the next thread, it'll take them up, and they can keep going. So the whole system is set up in such a way that it makes them feel like it's something familiar. So we don't deliver the questions on a one-on-one basis at the moment. It gives them understanding that actually this is an assessment like they normally would write. So it looks familiar. So once a learner has gone through all the different sections and they get to the end, obviously you'll notice that there's a validate. When I click submit assessment, it will also just double check all those validations and say that I've got a whole bunch of questions that I've missed out. Now at this point, that I can either choose to submit the exam or the assessment just as it is, but hopefully what a learner will do is actually say, I want to go answer those questions. I click cancel, and then I have to go back and hunt to see where I've missed out. So once a learner has submitted the assessment, the data will automatically go to the teacher login, and it will be ready for a teacher to actually start analyzing the data. And basically that once a learner has clicked submit and they've finished, we'd probably recommend that they leave the classroom, otherwise they get fidgety and they might end up disturbing some of the other learners around. So depending on your learners, you might have some that all depend on the allotted time that you have for the assessment. You may need to take breaks. That's perfectly fine. So as a learner is going through the assessment, it is recording their answers. So if a learner does need to take a break, they just click to my account over there, they click log out, and it takes them back to the original spot. And what it does is basically just pauses the assessment, and they can come back in later and continue the assessment thereafter. Right, so we've been looking at how to go about running the assessment, and yeah, we hopefully have explained everything you need to. If you do have any questions, you can always get hold of us at any point in time, or look at the user guide that we will send to you along with their login codes. Thanks very much.